G'day everyone, welcome back. This is episode 44 of my series covering 1904 Imperial Sunrise, the new campaign for Strategic Command American Civil War. Not actually a turn this time, the game's over. It's going to be a bit of an AAR. Have a look around, see how it went. First we've got to see OCB's final moves. Well, that's a lot of Navy he had out there. Not much for final turn. Guess you can't blame them for wanting to leave. Russian minor victory. And then we get the picture of it. Always nice to see that. The blizzard. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That winter weather is probably the reason that we're still on the Yalu a year after I knocked out his army up here. I reckon that was just timed really, really badly, because there was a point, about turn 20 or so, I had a unit here. Turned out he didn't have anything there, and I went after Ham Hung thinking, capture that, get the fighting spirit hit on him. Instead of moving south, if I'd moved to the west, I would have encircled his entire army, poured across the Yalu, that'd be curtains for him. Such are the pains of not being able to see behind the fog of war, aren't they? But, credit to OCB, he stymied my offensive and reduced me. I think I had 2 cores at one point, trying to smash through there. Never really got a hit in. So, we end the game with 15% fighting spirit. That is way, way closer than I would have liked, but oh well. We did get out the win in the end. So, a couple of things that could have done better. HQs, definitely. I was so sloppy with HQs. When I play against the AI, I just don't ever bother even mucking around with them at all, because I mean, I don't need to, and when I'm testing things, I'm not really that worried about what the armies are doing. I'm more looking for what's happening with events and fighting spirits and that sort of thing. That certainly cost me. How many HQs could I have built? I could build 2. I almost definitely should have built at least 1 much earlier. Certainly once I started taking the offensive, I didn't need as many cores as I had. I really needed HQs and cavalry and supporting things to actually get a hit in on his units. I haven't been able to review the turns yet where I did those attacks, so I'm not sure exactly how close I came to actually breaking his line. The fact I couldn't cut him off, or chose not to, because I thought that I'd be able to get Ham Hung. If you get Ham Hung, then you can sort of swing around a bit more, and there's certainly more options to have opened up there, but didn't see the opportunity at the time. Regret that a little bit. Another thing is, it took me a very long time to actually start threatening him, either in this mountain route up here or along the coastal road. Had I sent a brigade rushing forward much earlier, that would have relieved a lot of pressure against Mukden Liao Yang area earlier in the game. I mean, he got Liao Yang, and he had me under a lot of pressure at Mukden until all my reinforcements came in. A brigade here and a brigade up here, that would tide up a lot of his army that he just couldn't have afforded at that point. That could have been decisive too. Again, didn't see the opportunity. I mean, it's a victorious game, so got to take something from that, but I do think I made a lot of mistakes in this game too, particularly once I did have the advantage. Wasn't very successful at actually pushing it. Another thought I've had is the Navy. He knocked one of my battleships out of the game turn 1, and another to 1 point of strength. The rest were also whacked by the that first turn torpedo boat event. Could I have done something with that? Possibly. That battleship that was in Port Arthur, if I'd repaired that on turn 1, that would have gone from 1 point to 6. Actually, I'm not sure if I could have V-turn, because he did damage the ports too, but repairing that would have been about 100 points. Japan can afford the 100 points, particularly in that early part of the game, a lot less well than the Russians can. I built 2 corps, 2 cavalries. That's 1500, that's the starting turn. Repairing the battleships, if he had stayed and fought it, it turned out he just retreated immediately after. If I'd had 3 active battleships on the field, he definitely wouldn't have been able to chase my cruisers around as much as he did. I didn't really have any end goal with those cruisers other than just distract him. But looking at the turns, as I'm like looking at this turn, I've seen up to January of 1905 of his side. I do know he was very strapped for cash up until that point, and really had to like spend every point he could spare on the Navy so that he'd have enough forces to combat the Baltic Fleet. So another battleship actually doing damage to him for a little while. I did float in the comments the idea of putting a couple of mines in front of Chinampo. I'm not sure if I ever really had a torpedo boat that could have done that, but I definitely could have been more active with the Navy. Another thing that I've sort of heard several suggestions in the comments and on the forums and that sort of thing is to increase the strength of the ports and make the torpedo boats less effective, particularly after that first turn strike. It is quite possible to still reduce the Russian Navy in port, which wasn't actually, well, I don't think it was actually possible historically, just based on the way that the geography of the area, the way the Russian defences were set up. So I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do in terms of the next patch yet, but I am considering upping the strength of the port, probably upping the damage done to the Russian fleet on turn 1 by that event to compensate, but sort of making it more possible to keep a fleet in Port Arthur, because my main motivation for pulling the fleet up here turn 1 and 2 was to get them out of the fight so they couldn't be harassed by his torpedo boats. Turned out I never had the points really to spare to reinforce them afterwards, which what I was trying to do is to keep them out there long enough that I could dump a whole bunch of points in them, come out of 3 battleships and smash him at some point. But I suppose I didn't give enough credit to just how vulnerable Japan is in terms of points, particularly early on. He did hit me very hard, so what I really should have done, send out the brigades right from the start, pressure him there. That will give me the time to reinforce my Navy, bring that out. Then again, I think my losses on the Navy was sort of like everything, and I sunk like 2 ships or something. What was it? Yeah, 1 battleship, 1 cruiser, 2 torpedo boats. I think the Baltic Fleet took at least 1 of those out. So I was pretty terrible with my Navy, honestly. Bit of a change from the 1879 game we had a few months ago. I will say also, second half of the game I was really struggling at fighting spirit, and I had an active Navy here. If you sink the enemy ships, that does increase your own fighting spirit as much as it decreases the enemies. So having a Navy, even if I'd sunk another couple of cruisers, that would have done a lot of good things for my fighting spirit, which was really in the dumps second half of the game. That probably more than any other single factor really crippled my ability to counterattack. Anyway, well played OCB. I'm sure we'll fight again soon. Until then, this is BNC signing off.